Hi, I'm Lindsey, and I'm talking with medtech industry leaders on how they change lives for a better world.
The inventions and technologies are fascinating, and so are the people who work with them.
There was a period of time where I realized fundamentally my job was to go hang out with really smart people that are saving lives and then do work that would help them save more lives.
I got into the business to save lives, and it is incredibly motivating to work with people who are in that same business, saving or improving lives.
What better industry than where I get to wake up every day and just save people's lives?
These are extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, and this is The Leading Difference. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Leading Difference podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey, and I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Chad Bareither. Chad is the owner and principal consultant of Bareither Group Consulting. He partners with med device and pharma company leaders to boost productivity. This is delivered through the Focus and Align framework, the subject of his book, Improve Less. Chad is a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Michigan Technological University, as well as master's degrees in both industrial and systems engineering and applied statistics from Rutgers University. He has over 10 years of experience in the med device and pharma industries and almost 20 years of professional experience. All right. Well, welcome to the show, Chad. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of course. I'd love if you wouldn't mind by starting off telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and maybe what led you to what you're doing now.
Sure. So I started my career in the U.S. Army as a civilian engineer. So my background's in engineering, mechanical. I have a degree in mechanical engineering and also industrial engineering. So I started out in the U.S. Army as a civilian doing acquisition projects. So we would design and then purchase componentry for our warfighters from various defense contractors. And so my role in that was quality. So understanding, are we designing all of the elements correctly? Then when they're being produced, are they meeting our specifications? And then once they're in stockpile, do they continue to work before we hand them to the brave men and women that are defending our freedom? And so I worked there for a while and pretty early found my niche that I was really into process improvement. So I would visit defense contractors, and if we had an issue, what I was really seemed to have a knack for was helping to understand the process and make it better so we could either expand capacity or have better quality. And so that kind of bridged right into a unique program they were introducing at the time, which was called Lean Six Sigma, which is a corporate program for reducing variation and improving efficiency of processes and the corporation at large. So I was pretty lucky that these two things coincided at the same time, is that I was finding my niche and they were rolling out a program that really focused in that. So I was able to get into one of those programs, get trained and certified. And then I followed that path on to several other industries, including med device, pharma, and then was also a corporate employee in some utility, electric, natural gas. After my last corporate engagement, I went off on my own and I began consulting. So delivering the same services I had internally to those larger organizations, but now I have the ability to target smaller or growing organizations in my consulting engagements. If you combine corporate experience and consulting engagement, somewhere around 8 industries that I worked in, but I really enjoy the work and the challenges in med device and pharma a lot more. There's the purpose behind it of serving patients, and there's also some really significant technical challenges that I just find are fascinating to learn about. So for the last it's 6 years now. I've been consulting, delivering those services in various industries, but really trying to focus my space into the medtech arena.
Nice. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing a little bit about your background. I appreciate it. And it's fascinating to hear how you started off with one focus, and then it just continued to evolve and twist and turn into this amazing consulting career that you have now. And so many questions, but the first is, could 7-year-old Chad have possibly anticipated what you're doing now, since it's different than what you started off with?
Yeah, no, I think 7-year-old Chad probably wanted to be a professional baseball player. But if I zoom forward a little bit from that, once middle school and high school, I always naturally gravitated toward math and science, was thinking it was going to be engineering. And I did. I studied engineering, and most of my day is not engineering. It's really understanding people. But what's fascinating is if I look back, I think what all of my engineering education taught me was really a system for solving problems, right? So the problems that we solve happen to be mechanical design or industrial design. Got it. But taking that mindset of problem solving and now saying, well, the systems that I work with on a daily basis with my customers are a little bit more complex because you have mechanical systems, but you also have people systems that are intertwined with that, right? So whether I've worked across the spectrum and still do of research and development, clinical trials, manufacturing, and post-market surveillance. And across that, you can have systems set up, but people still operate it. So it's difficult to just analyze your way into the perfect solution. Even if I can show on paper that it works, like you still need to understand the people element of it. So I think that's been the biggest evolution through my career is early on, it was like, I don't understand why we're doing this. It makes sense on paper. And it's like the change management component of that has been really something I've been able to develop personally, I'd say over the last 6 to 10 years.
Yeah, and I'm curious. So, bridging that gap between systems and people and understanding that what looks good on paper might not translate as perfectly into real life as one would hope, because we're people and people are complex. So, were there certain learning opportunities that you had that helped bridge that gap of gaining your expertise and knowledge in that way? Or what led you to be able to do that so efficiently now?
Ooh, well, yeah, you're assuming I do it efficiently now. So, but I'd say I still believe we learn more from failures than we do from success, right? So
Mm.
there are specific projects or engagements I can look back to. So I'll talk about one specifically. This was a medical device assembly plant, and the particular production line that we were working on, we were trying to increase capacity on. And we even had the team engaged, right? So we were doing everything right in terms of the engagement project, had the teams involved, understood their pain points. We were trying to make it easier for them. And then like on paper again, it showed we could do the production line with the main assembly line with 3 operators instead of 4. And so we were really pushing for that because being just transparent, looking back, I was like, the productivity gain would have looked really sweet to management. But we had the operators telling us, like, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work that way. And we're like, no, it's going to work, right? And pushing for it. I don't know. You get a little focused on your own goals or whatever however you want to phrase that. And yeah, it was a struggle to launch. And they ended up having to cover some of that with overtime. They made some adjustments long term, but that was a big learning for me of, I mean, if the people actually doing that work 8 to 10 hours a day are telling you it's not going to work, like you should probably pull back and either you got more explaining to do, more improvements to do, or you should maybe listen to them a little bit more. But there's other scenarios I can look at that were, when I say failure, right? Not everything means it's a flaming dumpster fire, but sometimes you don't get exactly what you expect out of it. And a lot of it I can point back to and say, oof, I could have done a better job. It's not that the analysis was wrong. It's not that the tool we put in place or the management technique or the visualization. It's that we didn't have the right level of buy-in or the right people buying in.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate your honesty and transparency, but I do think, to your point, failure or whatever we perceive to be as failure because it didn't work out quite the way we hoped for is such a powerful learning tool if you can take it and go, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't, here's what I can do better next time. And you don't have to go, okay, that was a waste. It's never a waste if you can learn from it.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. And I think it only in recent years, I'd say the last 4 to 5 years, that I've really gotten into that more of a bias for action of what's the worst that's going to happen. And honestly, I'm not talking about changes that are going to bankrupt a company, right? So if you're changing the
Right.
product, well, let's try it. So having a bias for action and thinking, just like you pointed out, that it's going to be a learning experience, right? So if you treat it more of an experiment, success isn't necessarily binary. It was a success or it wasn't. We learned something, maybe we got better, maybe we didn't, but that means the next round, the engagement that we talked about before we started recording, I'm just coming back from. We had 2 weeks of not going so well. And then the last week there was finally a breakthrough. And it was like, but I'm comfortable with it. The team was getting disengaged, but I'm like, we're going to get there. You guys stay positive because I know we're going to get there. And the failures,
Yeah.
we know so much more about that process now than we did 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And that brought up an interesting point. So persistence and the willingness or the bias to action, which I really liked how you put that, the willingness to experiment is something that does take a level of comfort that maybe not everyone is so excited about.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering what you have seen over the years as being some of the top qualities of a leader that contribute to that success and that willingness to experiment.
Yeah, so it helps me to think about specific leaders that are like embodying that rather than just speak generically about it. And there was an R&D manager that I worked with. His first name was John, but really took the stigma of failure, I think not even using that word as much, out of it and just saying, let's try and see what happens. And kind of building that learning mindset of I'd rather move fast and learn something than move slow and get it perfect. And in industries, especially like a bunch of the med tech fields, I know in some of the pharma clients I've worked with, they're looking at things like new technologies, new modalities of disease. I'm not a scientist, but these are things that we've never done before. And so the mindset of trying to get it perfect, like this leader I worked with previously, John, is like, why are we wanting to get it perfect? We won't get it perfect first time. And if we try to, we're going to be moving too slowly. So that's kind of the first thing that I think of is taking the stigma out of failure and turning it more into trying, learning, mindset, things like that. I think the other thing is keeping open communication. And what I mean by that is there's another leader I'm thinking of, and his first name was Mickey, and trying to have more open conversations. Information can be used for power in some cases. If you're harboring information or knowledge, like I'm the conduit, right? So that I become what puts it all together. And he was big on breaking down some of those and having more open conversations about what we're learning and what works and what doesn't work. And I mean, you see teams grow together faster. And so then when you take those two qualities, if I take the stigma of failure off of the organization as a whole, and I work to build more open lines of communication and you build trust, right? So then I'm more, I don't want to say confident. That's not maybe the right word to go after, but there's less hesitancy. I'm less fear maybe. So like not being confident doesn't mean I'm not fearful, but if I can take a little bit of that fear, a little bit of the stigma of failure out, I'm willing to try. I'm willing to go off on something new. And as we look at this industry of new advances in technology, new challenges of diseases, we're going to have to keep moving fast and do it in areas that are pretty uncertain. So those are some things that I think help of saying that we're not going to get it right every time, opening up lines of communication to build trust in the team, and then we can really move faster to a shared goal.
Yeah, I really like that. Thank you for that advice and insight. That's really helpful. So now with your own company consulting, well, a couple of questions, but the first is what stage of business do you usually typically come in on, or is there not necessarily a stage that's your sweet spot?
I wouldn't say right now there's a stage where I could say I have a litany of business cases for one stage. So multiple stages. I work with some organizations that are still in, so if you think about the business, the corporate stage, established businesses, so they're past, what would that be? Like Series 2 funding. So commercialized product. So I'm either working with the R&D pipeline on next generation products, next innovation, or in the operation space of improving manufacturing operations are typically the two areas that I'm working in the most.
Okay. Yeah. And was there an interesting learning curve going from being an employee to being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So let me answer that two ways. The first is moving from being an internal employee to being a consultant, right? Because it's just you're of a different role in the company, right? And then there's also, to your point, is great, moving from being an employee to an entrepreneur. So if you don't mind, I'll kind of tackle both of those. The first is moving from employee to consultant is interesting because I was on the employee side when you would have consultants come in. And so leaving the bad taste in my mouth from some consultants we had worked in, they're there to make an impact so that they can either upsell their services or whatever. And I can remember being on engagements, which is like pushing so hard, just I have to work with these people when you leave. So you're kind of creating a mess for us and just trying to meet people more where they're at. But, there's an adage of a prophet isn't recognized in their hometown. Sometimes they just need someone from the outside to point out what everyone has showing. And I know that sounds simple, but sometimes you just need to come in and say, independent third party here. And yes, that is the problem. So it's nice that you have that sense of authority, but I am very cautious about the fact of, look, these people need to live with the solution when I walk away. The worst thing in my mind could be helping a client solve a problem and then it returned for them. So even if they did want to call me back, that would be seen as not ideal in my mind. I want to help them get to a solution that then they can buy in and sustain it. So that first change is going from internal employee to consultant, where you do have to make an impact, a splash, a return on investment, whatever you say. But I'm cautious to also say, but they need to adopt the change. They need to own it. It can't just be my great idea. The other side that you talked about is going from employee to entrepreneur, which is also an interesting transition. As an employee, there's some perceived safety and stability. And I say that just perceived because depending upon the industry that you're in, as markets change and things like that, layoffs come, things of that nature. So job security is never 100%, but there is some perceived job security and stability there. But as you get past the startup stage, you start to specialize, which means your job responsibility narrows, right? So in a larger organization, typically you become a specialist, but not very broad in thinking. And so that can be comfortable as well. You develop some technical expertise. Moving into the entrepreneurial space, which you probably have dabbled in a little bit as a business owner yourself, is you are simultaneously the chief marketing officer and IT support and delivery services and fill in the blank. So you're wearing a lot of hats, and it can be difficult to gravitate towards the stuff you're really good at. So I am best at the delivery, the actual client engagement. But I recognize if I'm not doing sales and marketing and building new connections like that, eventually that work goes away. So it's trying to manage yourself and not stay where you're comfortable, if that makes sense, and not just deep dive all the way down to specialty in one area and have to learn some of these things or, find the right people to do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very insightful. So you are also a published author, and I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your book.
Yeah. So the name of the book I wrote in the fall of 2023, it was released, is called Improve Less, and intentionally thought-provoking title, but I got to it in a very roundabout way. The whole concept of the book started behind that when I launched my consulting firm, I was still working full-time as a corporate employee. So a friend of a friend asked if I can help, and I said, sure. And that was a side gig. And then had another one come up and another one come up. And then one of those clients wanted something more. And eventually I didn't have time to do a full-time corporate job anymore. But then I had 3 clients that were all at kind of different phases and asking for different things. And so I had one client that was really focused on strategy, and we need to align our strategy. We need a better way to cascade that into the organization. Another client that was really focused on process improvement. We want to build our problem solving and process improvement skills for the organization. And I had a third client that really wanted to have better eyes on the business. So we would call it a daily management system, visualization of metrics and understanding the business so we can diagnose problems. Well, once you get good at strategy, then you actually have to go improve the processes. Once I'm pretty good at process improvement, I should probably align those strategically. Once I can see the problems in my business, I need to. So essentially, all of those three clients needed the three parts that were together. So I sat back and I said, well, this is starting to become a little bit of a mess. What would I do if I had a new client? Where would I start? So I started writing down the process really for my own benefit. And then working with a business coach, I was like, I'm going to give this away as like a PDF or whatever. They're like, no, you should turn this into a book. And I'm like a book? And they're like, yeah. And I had no idea how to do that. So, back to our conversation about entrepreneurs. So I found someone who did. And I'm work with someone else, a publishing strategist, helped me go through everything, which I thought it was pretty good in terms of editing. That was not the case. So went through some content editing and professional editing, and then hired a professional illustrator for my hand-drawn drawings. So yeah, it was a journey, but that's how it started, was me saying, well, what's my process? And so really the purpose of the book is it is a framework. Anyone can pick it up and follow it. And I also tried to keep it short. I don't like to be very verbose in the communications to my clients because they need to understand it. So it's literally something that you could read in a weekend and start on Monday.
Wow. I love that. Okay. So, yeah, so you've written this book and you have your consulting firm. And what are you excited about coming up? Maybe both personally and professionally.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's easier for me to answer personally, so I'll start there. So my wife and I have 3 children, and they're all pretty active in different competitive endeavors, gymnastics. We talked before, my middle daughter is a dancer. The 2 girls, the gymnast and the dancer, also play volleyball. And then my youngest son is on a baseball and a soccer team. And so, I just love supporting them in those. Now, I say all that. Academics are also important. They're doing well academically. That's kind of the condition for doing the sports and stuff like that. But really pouring into them right now, it's going to sound so cliche, but our oldest is 13 right now, and some pictures came up, memories on my phone, and it goes by quick. So personally, I'm just excited about in them right now, and they're turning, I use this term and my coworker asked me, they're turning into real people with their own personalities and their own and it's frustrating at times because they have their own thoughts, but it's fascinating right now. And just being able to spend more time investing in them is great. Professionally is exciting to really, I'm niching back down into this medtech area, right? So I'm carrying a pharma client. I came out of pharma engagement that was just at the beginning of this year. And I've worked in other industries, but I'm just really fired up about the work, the technical challenges in these areas. So getting back into some client engagements that are med device and pharmaceuticals. And then pharmaceuticals has stuff going on that I can't begin to understand. Biotherapeutic proteins and cell therapy stuff, it's fascinating technology, but it's still processed, right? And so I might not understand the science, but I do understand process. And I've been able to help in those areas. And it's humbling to be contributing to the field. So I'm really excited to niche back down in that area and do some more work in this med tech field.
Yeah. And when it comes to med tech, are there any moments working with clients that stand out to you as just confirmation that you are in the right place, in the right industry, at the right time?
Yeah. So I know very little about cell therapy, but basically you grow stem cells and you make them into other types of cells that would be beneficial. If there's people in cell therapy listening to this, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's mind-boggling, the science. But I was working with that group, and so they were building up their pilot capabilities. And I'm looking at from more like an industrial engineering, manufacturing point of view, developing standard work. And so they're like, oh, this is so helpful. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, I don't even understand what you guys do. So the fact that I can be any contribution here is, but I think pulling back on that is you need to invest in your strengths. So here's very skilled, multi-year experience PhD scientists, and sometimes they just need someone to help them with structuring up the process flow and the capacities and the standard work that they need to do this consistently. And I'm good at that. And so this kind of harkens back to our conversations about entrepreneurship, right? Of knowing what you're good at and knowing what you need help with. And I know what I'm good at. And if I find clients that need help in that area, I'm thrilled to support it. But that was one engagement where it's like, I understand about zero of what you just explained to me, but I think I can help you.
I love that. That's fantastic. One of the things I've noticed and really appreciated about the medtech industry is everybody is really good about celebrating and acknowledging how we all fit into the efforts to make it successful. So even if you are not the scientist or you are also an engineer, but say in my case, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, but I do have a marketing ability, and the respect mutually that occurs for everybody's contributions, I think is really special in the medtech industry. I'm wondering if you experience that too.
Yeah, I think there's definitely times it's kind of like a family, right? If families fight, if families get along together. There's definitely times where it's like people are like, sales department doesn't know what they're doing, or and you're like, but at the end of the day, you recognize you do need all those parts.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, these technologies and this research is expensive, so you do need to sell, right? I mean, that's a reality. So you're right. They
Mhm.
do all need to get to, and if people slow down, I think you're right. Eventually, yes, we need all these parts to work. I think there's definitely times where people are having a bad time and they get a little grumpy and they're like, "Man, that department doesn't know what they're doing." But no, I think all the departments are actually really good at what they're doing. So you just look at the growth that you're seeing in the industry and the valuation of some of these companies, and they know what they're doing, and they're serving a need that we have, supporting our health and wellness. And so it's cool. It's really cool to see that all come together. I think you get a very interesting view of that at some of the smaller organizations because there is a lot more of that trust and that team camaraderie. But even, I worked for a Fortune 500 company when I was in med device as a corporate employee, and you still have that within the product teams, within the production teams, that they're there to support each other. They're there for the win. There's also a healthy dose of competition in the industry, I think, that makes it really driven. So it's fun to be a part of. It's fast paced because of the personality. It's fast paced because of science. It's fast paced because of the competitiveness with other competitors in the industry. So yeah, it's a fun space to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So pivoting the conversation just for fun. Imagine that you were to be offered $1 million to teach a masterclass on anything you want. It could be in your industry, but it doesn't have to be. What would you choose to teach?
Yeah. So maybe I'm hopefully not being risk averse here because I would teach something that I'm already good at teaching. But so some of my favorite things to teach are structured problem solving. So most people that are in any type of leadership position got there because they were probably good at solving problems. And I think where we have challenges as organizations grow is that not everyone solves a problem the same way. So how do you develop the new talent coming up to be like those next leaders? And you shouldn't just rely on individual people to be like, we'll just find the good problem solvers and they'll go up. I've seen in organizations where you can really multiply, even exponentially grow the pace of improvement by having structured problem solving in. So that's what I would do. Personally, that's DMAIC formatted problem solving. It's a 5-phase problem solving approach: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So that's something that I love teaching because I love the light bulb moment that goes off in people's heads when we teach them that. There is a portion that is statistics, and I love teaching statistics because most people think this is going to be the worst thing ever. And I try to make it a little bit fun, and they're like, oh, that was fun, and I learned something, and that's what fires me up. So yeah, it would be structured problem solving. That's what I would teach a masterclass on.
Okay, I like it. And how do you wish to be remembered after you leave this world?
My love language that I express is in service, helpful. I think that's the main thing, whether it's in a client engagement or in the neighborhood or the family. I enjoy helping people. And so whether that's consulting on the launch of a new diagnostic device or helping someone repair their tractor, right? I enjoy engaging and learning with people and solving problems together. So I really like helping people. So I think I'd like to be remembered in that way. Helpful.
Like it. Absolutely. And then final question. What is one thing that makes you smile every time you see or think about it?
One thing. Well, I don't know. I've smiled a lot this week seeing pictures of my kids when they were younger because I don't know. My iPhone's just playing tricks on me. It keeps showing pictures of my kids when they were little. So that's it. I think right now, just the point of life that I'm at right now with kids, two of my brothers just had babies as well. So little kids, and just me realizing like my kids are never going to be that age again. I've been travel and seen a lot of little kids in different cities, and it's sweet because it's so simple. Their world is so simple at that age. So I think it makes me smile just because the innocence that's there. Yeah. I'm gonna stick with that answer.
Yeah, great answer. It's special to witness, and it always brings a smile too, especially little kids at airports that are dragging their tiny little backpacks or rolly bags behind them, and they've got their best stuffed friend. Oh my gosh, it's so cute.
So one thing that's been interesting to see is when people have younger kids and, maybe they're misbehaving or maybe they're just excited, right? And the parents are kind of flustered. It brings a smile to my face, not because the parents are flustered. It's just because I can remember being a parent, you make a big deal out of it, man, but I just appreciate the innocence and the genuine joy this small human is trying to have right now. And I think that's the thing right now in my life that's bringing a smile every time I see it or think about it.
I love it. I love it. Well, Chad, this has been an incredible conversation. I really appreciate your insights and advice and everything that you're doing. If anyone's listening and needs some outside support, please definitely get in touch with Chad. We are so honored to be making a donation on your behalf as a thank you for your time today to the Polaris Project, which is a non-governmental organization that works to combat and prevent sex and labor trafficking in North America. So thank you for choosing that organization to support. And we just wish you the most continued success as you work to change lives for a better world.
Oh, thanks a lot. And you got a lot going on. So I wish you continued success in all your endeavors as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you also to our listeners for tuning in. And if you're feeling as inspired as I am right now, I would love it if you would share this episode with a colleague or two. And we will catch you next time.
The Leading Difference is brought to you by Velentium. Velentium is a full-service CDMO with 100% in-house capability to design, develop, and manufacture medical devices, from Class 2 wearables to Class 3 active implantable medical devices. Velentium specializes in active implantables, leads, programmers, and accessories across a wide range of indications, such as neuromodulation, deep brain stimulation, cardiac management, and diabetes management. Velentium's core competencies include electrical, firmware, and mechanical design, mobile apps, embedded cybersecurity, human factors and usability, automated test systems, systems engineering, and contract manufacturing. Velentium works with clients worldwide, from startups seeking funding to established Fortune 100 companies. Visit Velentium.com to explore your next step in medical device development.